12-year-old Jamie Carter stood at the window of the old farmhouse, staring out into the empty street below. The town of Willow Creek had always been quiet, small, surrounded by forests, and tucked far from the nearest highway. But this silence was unnatural. It had been 3 days since the last adult left the town, or rather, since they vanished. Jamie wasn't sure which. His parents were among the first to disappear. One minute they were watching TV together, and the next morning, he woke up alone. No note. No struggle. Just empty silence. He hadn't seen another soul since. At first, he thought he was the only one left. The internet was down, cell signals were gone, and every house he checked was abandoned. Lights were still on in some, meals half-eaten, doors wide open as if the people inside had simply vanished mid-sentence. It didn't feel right. Nothing felt right. He wrapped his arms tighter around himself and stepped away from the window. He had made the farmhouse his base, an old, creaky building at the edge of town where no one really lived anymore. It smelled like dust and old wood, but it had food, a working fireplace, and something most other places didn't: heavy locks on all the doors. Because last night, at exactly midnight, Jamie had heard footsteps outside. Soft. Shuffling. Like someone dragging their feet. He thought it was his imagination until he heard it again tonight. Same time. Same slow, deliberate pacing. His heart pounded as he tiptoed back to the window and peeked through the cracked curtain. Streetlights flickered faintly, casting long shadows across the road. For a moment, everything looked still. Then, movement. A figure. Tall, slouched, and dragging its legs slightly as it walked. Jamie's breath caught in his throat. It didn't look like someone searching for help. It looked lost. Confused. Or maybe, not alive. Jamie ducked away from the window, heart thudding in his chest like a drum. He didn't know what he saw. A dream? A trick of the light? Or something worse? He waited in silence, every muscle in his body tensed. The shuffling footsteps moved past the house, then paused. Right outside. He held his breath. Scratch. Scratch. Something touched the door. His mind raced. Should he run? Hide? Confront it? He had a flashlight and a baseball bat he found in one of the barns, but against whatever that was. The sound faded. The footsteps shuffled away again, disappearing into the night. Jamie exhaled slowly. He needed answers. Something was very wrong in Willow Creek. And no one was coming to help. The next morning, Jamie set out. He packed a small bag with supplies, canned beans, a water bottle, a flashlight, and the bat. He headed into the heart of town, toward the library. If the phones were dead and the people were gone, maybe books could tell him something. He crept through the main street, eyes darting left and right. Shops were still open. Signs still swinging gently in the wind. But there was no one. When he got to the library, the door was already open. Inside, dust motes floated in the sunbeams. It looked untouched, except the front desk had been ransacked. Papers were scattered everywhere. And in the middle of the floor, drawn in shaky red ink, was a circle with strange markings Jamie couldn't understand. He took a photo with the instant camera he found earlier. Maybe someone else would know what it meant. As he explored the library, he found a section on local folklore. He flipped through old books, yellowed pages filled with tales of hauntings, disappearances, and strange illnesses that once swept the area generations ago. One line stood out. When the dead walk, it begins with silence. When you hear footsteps in the night, you're already too late. Jamie froze. Was that what he heard? Suddenly, a book tumbled from the top shelf, slamming onto the floor. Jamie yelped and turned around, but no one was there. He picked up the book. History of Willow Creek. He opened it to the bookmarked page. A black and white photo stared back at him. A group of townspeople, gathered in front of a church. Faces blurred. But something in the background chilled him to the bone. A figure, half-shadowed, standing behind the crowd, too tall, with a face that looked wrong. It was barely visible, but unmistakably there. Jamie shoved the book into his bag and bolted from the library. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat near the window, baseball bat in hand, eyes wide open. And when midnight came, the footsteps returned. Only this time, there were more of them. Jamie crouched in the corner of the living room, gripping the bat tightly, his back pressed against the cold wall. The house was dark except for the faint moonlight leaking through the window. Outside, the footsteps multiplied. At first, it was just one pair. Now, it sounded like half a dozen, or more, slow, dragging feet scraping across the asphalt. His breath hitched. He didn't dare move. Every instinct screamed to hide, to run, but he couldn't risk making noise. Not yet. The old farmhouse had thick curtains, so whoever, or whatever, was outside wouldn't be able to see in. But he knew they were there. Close. Then, something new. A whisper. At first, it sounded like the wind. But it came again. Faint. Garbled. Like someone trying to speak through water. Jamie. He froze. His name. It was calling his name. Jamie, come out, we see you. His fingers trembled around the bat. Who was it? Who knew his name? How could they? And then, a bang. The front door shuddered violently as something slammed against it. Then again. And again. They were trying to break in. Jamie jumped to his feet, heart hammering in his ears. He grabbed his backpack, flashlight, and bolted through the kitchen to the back door. He hesitated for only a second, then threw it open and ran. The night was cold and wet with dew. He didn't stop to look behind. He sprinted through the backyard, over the fence, and down the slope into the trees beyond. Only when he reached the edge of the woods did he pause, panting, hiding behind a thick tree trunk. He looked back. The house sat quiet and still. No lights. No broken door. But the front gate slowly creaked open. One figure stepped into the moonlight. Its limbs dangled loosely. Its skin, pale, almost gray. Then another followed. And another. None of them moved quickly. But they moved with purpose. Direction. Like they knew where he was going. Jamie backed deeper into the woods. He couldn't go back to the farmhouse now. He needed somewhere safer. Somewhere they couldn't follow. The church. He remembered it from the photo in the library. The old one at the edge of town, long abandoned. His parents used to say it was cursed. But maybe that's why no one else would go there. Maybe it was the one place he could hide. Jamie traveled through the trees, taking the long way to avoid the roads. Branches scratched in his arms, and every sound made him flinch, but he didn't stop. The town had always felt like it had secrets, strange traditions, whispers about the buried past, and the occasional odd visitor who never stayed long. But now it felt like all those secrets were waking up at once. He reached the old stone church just before sunrise. It stood crooked, as if bowing under its own weight, with cracked stained glass windows and a rusty gate that squealed when he pushed it open. Inside, it was even worse, dust, mold, and rotting wood, but it was empty. Jamie sealed the door behind him with a heavy wooden beam and collapsed against a pew, exhausted. His mind replayed the whispers, the footsteps, the figures outside the house. What were they? Zombies? Ghosts? Was it a curse? He pulled out the photo from the book again. That shadowy figure in the background, it hadn't been a trick. It was real. And somehow, it was connected to this. He needed more answers. Somewhere in this town was the truth. As he looked around the ruined church, he noticed something strange near the altar. The floorboards had been pried open. Beneath them was a stone slab, like a trapdoor. Curious, and afraid, Jamie knelt and lifted the slab. A staircase descended into darkness. Something was hidden down there. And whatever it was, he had a feeling it was the reason Willow Creek had fallen silent. As he stood at the top of the stairs, flashlight in one hand, bat in the other, he heard it again. A whisper. But this time, it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from below. Jamie hesitated at the top of the stairs, his flashlight beam flickering in the darkness. The whisper was louder now, almost like a hum in the air, vibrating through his bones. His heart raced, and every part of him screamed to turn back, to run as far away from this place as possible. But something inside him, a mixture of fear and curiosity, kept him rooted to the spot. The darkness below seemed to pulse, like the beating heart of the earth itself. The whispering continued, growing clearer as it beckoned him downward. "Come closer, Jamie. It's all waiting for you. Come." He swallowed hard, gripping the flashlight tighter. With a steadying breath, he forced his legs to move and descended slowly into the cold, damp air. The stairs creaked under his weight, as if protesting each step he took. At the bottom, the stairs opened up into a long corridor carved from stone. The walls were covered in moss, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Jamie's flashlight revealed more of the hidden underground room. There were shelves filled with ancient books, odd-looking symbols carved into the walls, and strange, unfamiliar objects scattered around, artifacts that seemed out of place, even for this forgotten town. The whispers intensified as Jamie ventured deeper. He could now make out fragmented phrases, like a conversation between many voices, overlapping and distorted. "Not much time left, must find him, he is the key, they're coming." Jamie's pulse quickened. He wasn't sure who, or what, they were talking about, but it didn't matter. It was clear he was in more danger than he ever realized. The path widened into a chamber at the end of the corridor, and his flashlight caught the glint of something metallic. A large, rusty door stood in front of him, covered in a strange symbol. It looked like a series of intertwined lines, forming a circle. At its center was an eye, a black, hollow eye, staring at him with an unsettling intensity. Jamie's throat tightened, and the air felt heavier here, as though the room itself was alive, breathing. The whispering voices now sounded like a chorus, chanting something unintelligible. His stomach turned as he approached the door. He reached out to touch the cold metal, and as his fingers brushed against it, the door creaked open of its own accord. It was as if it had been waiting for him. Beyond the door was a massive, circular chamber. The walls were lined with rows of candles that flickered despite the absence of wind. In the center of the room, a large stone altar stood, covered in dark stains. The air was thick with an acrid, metallic scent. Jamie stepped inside, the whispers growing louder until they felt like they were inside his head. His heart raced, and for a moment, he almost turned to run. But something stopped him. Something compelled him to stay. In the middle of the room, on the altar, lay an object covered in a blood-stained cloth. Jamie's breath caught as he slowly approached. He reached out, his hand trembling as he lifted the cloth. Underneath was a book, a large, ancient tome bound in cracked leather. The cover was covered in strange symbols, much like the ones he had seen on the walls and the door. The whispers quieted for a brief moment as Jamie held the book in his hands. It felt wrong. The moment he touched it, the temperature in the room dropped. The candles flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the chamber, and Jamie's breath became visible in the cold air. A figure appeared in the center of the room. Tall. Thin. With a face that was more shadow than flesh, its hollow eyes staring straight at him. Jamie froze, unable to move. The figure didn't speak, it just watched him, its presence suffocating the room. Then, a voice broke through the silence. "You should not have come here, Jamie." It wasn't the whisper. This voice was deep, almost echoing in the space, and it sounded ancient. Like the voice of the town itself. "I've waited for you. For so long." Jamie's heart slammed in his chest. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He was paralyzed with fear. "What are you?" Jamie managed to whisper, his voice barely audible. The figure stepped forward, the shadows swirling around it like smoke. "We are the town's past," it said, its voice cold and hollow. "The ones who were buried beneath, forgotten by time. And now, we are coming back." Jamie didn't understand. The whispers had been about this. The town? The people? What was happening? Before he could ask another question, the figure raised its hand, and the room seemed to bend around him. The stone walls cracked, and the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. "The town is awake, Jamie," the figure said. "And you are the key." Then, everything went black. Jamie's eyes snapped open, and for a moment, he wasn't sure where he was. The world around him was pitch black, cold and unfamiliar. He felt the rough stone beneath his palms as he pushed himself up, struggling to breathe. His mind was foggy, his thoughts swirling in confusion. The figure, the shadowy presence, was gone. The room, once filled with an oppressive silence, now seemed to pulse with a low hum. It was almost as if the air itself was alive, vibrating with something Jamie couldn't quite comprehend. As his vision adjusted to the darkness, he realized he was no longer in the stone chamber. He was lying in the middle of a street. The same street he had run down earlier, outside the church. But something was wrong. The town had changed. The once empty streets were now filled with movement. Figures shuffled through the shadows, their forms barely visible against the dim light of the rising moon. Jamie's pulse quickened as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. There were people, shadows of people, moving in jerky, unnatural ways. They didn't look human. Their faces were contorted, their limbs twisted in ways that were unnatural, and their eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. They were undead. Jamie's stomach churned. The whispers from the underground, the warnings from the shadowy figure, began to make sense. The town hadn't just fallen silent because of some mysterious event. The people hadn't disappeared. They had changed. And now, the town itself was awakening. He staggered to his feet, heart racing. The figures moved closer, and Jamie's instincts screamed for him to run. He stumbled backward, his eyes darting around in search of an escape. The streets were filled with them, more than he could count, all coming from every direction. He had no idea where to go, but there was no time to think. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the air, cutting through the growing noise of the approaching horde. "Jamie!" The voice was familiar, though strained. It was quiet, but it carried a sense of urgency that made Jamie's blood run cold. His breath caught in his throat as he turned toward the sound. A figure appeared at the end of the street, running toward him. It was a boy, a teenager, maybe 16 or 17, dressed in dark clothes, his face pale with fear. "Jamie," the boy shouted again, waving his arms to get his attention. "Over here! Hurry!" Without thinking, Jamie ran toward the boy, adrenaline pushing him forward. As he approached, the boy pulled him into a narrow alleyway, away from the crowd of monsters that was now filling the street. What are they?" Jamie gasped, his chest heaving from the sprint. The boy's face twisted with a grim expression, his eyes wide with terror. "They're the town," he said, his voice strained. "The people who lived here, the ones who were buried, they've come back. We have to get out of here, now." Jamie's mind raced. It didn't make sense. How could this be happening? How could the whole town turn like this? The boy grabbed Jamie's arm, pulling him deeper into the alley. "Come on. They're already awake. We don't have much time before the whole town is after us." "Who are you?" Jamie asked, his voice tight. "How do you know this?" "My name is Alex," the boy said, not slowing his pace. "I've been here longer than you. You're not the first one to come looking for answers, but trust me, you won't find what you're looking for here. The town, it's cursed. It always has been." Jamie stumbled over his words. "Cursed?" Alex nodded grimly. "It's not just the people who are dead. The town itself is alive. And it doesn't forget. It waits. And now it's awake, and it's hungry." Jamie's mind struggled to process everything. The things he'd seen, the things he had heard, it didn't make sense. But Alex's words felt real. There was something in his tone, in his eyes, that made Jamie believe him. "Where can we go?" Jamie asked desperately. "How do we stop this?" Alex paused, turning to look at Jamie. "There's one place," he said slowly, "but it's dangerous. And we might not make it in time. The only way to stop the town from rising completely is to find the source. The heart of the curse. But it's hidden deep. No one knows where it is exactly, but I think you're the key." Jamie's eyes widened. "Me?" Alex nodded. "You touched the book, didn't you? In the church? That's when it all began. Whatever's in that book, it's connected to this. And now, the town is calling you." Before Jamie could respond, a shriek echoed down the alley. He whipped his head around, his stomach dropping. The figures were closing in. They had found them. Alex turned toward Jamie with wide eyes. "We need to go, now." Jamie barely had time to react. The alley was narrowing, the figures shuffling closer with unnatural speed. The sound of their footsteps grew louder, more frantic, as if the whole town was closing in on them. "Move!" Alex shouted, yanking Jamie by the arm. The two of them sprinted through the narrow passage, ducking and weaving to avoid the grasping hands of the undead. Their skin was pale, their eyes hollow, but it was their movements, jerky and mechanical, that sent a shiver down Jamie's spine. They weren't just mindless corpses, they were driven by something more sinister. Jamie's heart pounded in his chest, and his breath came in ragged gasps. He didn't know where they were going, but he couldn't think about that now. All that mattered was getting away. Getting to safety. As they reached the end of the alley, Alex veered to the right, pulling Jamie into another street. But it was no better here. The town was alive with the groans and shuffling of the undead, their movements now more coordinated, more relentless. "Where do we go?" Jamie shouted, trying to keep pace with Alex. "There's an old hideout," Alex said, eyes scanning the street. "A place where they can't follow us." "Where?" "The town's old tunnel system. It runs beneath the streets. We can use it to escape the main roads." Jamie nodded, trying to push the panic out of his mind. He had no idea how deep this nightmare ran, but it was clear now that the entire town was involved. There was no escaping it unless they figured out what was really going on. Alex led the way, taking a sharp left into an overgrown garden. It looked abandoned, and for a moment, Jamie thought they were safe. But then he heard the unmistakable sound of dragging feet behind them. The horde was close. A dark shape loomed ahead, an iron door half buried in the overgrown foliage. "This way!" Alex called, rushing toward it. He yanked open the door with surprising strength, revealing a steep set of stairs leading down into darkness. Jamie hesitated. The sounds of the dead were closing in on them. The door was their only chance. "Now, Jamie!" Alex urged. Jamie didn't wait another second. He followed Alex into the darkness, slamming the door shut behind him. The heavy door groaned in protest, but it held. For now. They descended into the tunnel, the air dank and cool. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the stone walls, but there was no time to slow down. Every footstep above ground felt like it was getting closer, the horde relentless in its pursuit. They reached the bottom of the stairs and found themselves in a narrow passageway. The tunnel stretched out in both directions, but Alex immediately turned left, pulling Jamie along. "Keep your voice down," Alex whispered urgently. "They can't follow us in here, not easily. But we have to keep moving. We can't stay in one place for long." Jamie nodded, his heart still racing from the chase. The fear was still there, gnawing at him, but there was something else now, too, a burning curiosity. Why was the town like this? Why had it all changed? "You said I'm the key," Jamie said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What does that mean? What's really going on here?" Alex didn't answer right away. His eyes darted down the tunnel, checking for signs of danger. "It's the town's curse," he said finally. "The town's past is alive, literally. And it doesn't forget. You saw the book, right? It's the source of all of this. Whoever owns it controls the town. Controls the dead. Jamie felt a chill run down his spine. The book. He remembered how it had felt when he touched it, the way everything had shifted. The figure that had appeared, it had been waiting for him, waiting for someone like him. But I didn't ask for this, Jamie muttered, his voice thick with frustration. I didn't ask for any of it. I know, Alex replied. But it doesn't matter. You're the one who activated it. The moment you touched the book, you became a part of this. The tunnel suddenly widened into a large chamber, its walls lined with old stone shelves and dusty crates. A strange symbol was etched into the stone floor, and the faintest glow emanated from it. In the center of the chamber, there was an old wooden chest. Alex stopped in front of it, his expression grim. This is it, Alex said, his voice low. The heart of the curse. We need to destroy it before it's too late. Jamie stepped closer, feeling a strange pull toward the chest. It was like the town was calling to him again, urging him to open it, to see what was inside. But he knew better than to trust that feeling. What's inside? Jamie asked, already knowing the answer. Alex didn't look up, his hands trembling as he fumbled for the latch. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's the key to everything. If we don't stop it now, the town will never be free. It'll spread, infecting everything around it. The chest creaked as Alex opened it, and a strange, unnatural light spilled out. For a moment, Jamie thought he saw shapes moving within the glow, eyes, but they were gone before he could focus on them. Then, as Alex lifted whatever was inside the chest, Jamie heard it. A sound. A voice. The voice from before. The one that had been calling to him. Jamie. It was right behind him. Jamie spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice, the one he'd heard in his head, the one that had led him here, it was now clear, louder than ever. It wasn't just a whisper. It was inside him, echoing through his skull like 100 voices all speaking at once. Jamie, the voice breathed his name, slow and deliberate, drawing out the syllables like it was savoring them. Alex turned, startled by the sudden change in atmosphere. His eyes widened in recognition. No. Not now, he hissed, his voice tight with panic. The chamber felt colder, the air heavy with something malevolent. The glow from the chest flickered as if fighting against the encroaching darkness. Jamie could feel the temperature drop, his breath coming out in visible clouds. The voice continued, its tone soothing yet terrifying. You shouldn't have come here, Jamie, it said, the words curling around him, wrapping themselves around his thoughts. The town called for you. And now that you're here, there's no turning back. Jamie's hand shook, and he tried to step back, but the ground beneath him seemed to tilt. The shadows in the chamber stretched unnaturally long, as if the very walls were alive, watching him. Alex stepped forward, trying to block his view of the chest. No, Alex said firmly, his voice trembling. Don't listen to it, Jamie. It's not the town. It's the curse. The town has been twisted, corrupted by whatever's in that book. It wants you, Jamie. You have to stop it. Jamie's mind was spinning. He tried to ignore the voice, but it felt impossible. It was in his head now, vibrating with every thought, sinking deep into his bones. The curse isn't the town itself. It's what binds the town, the power behind it, the voice continued. The one who holds the book can control everything. You'll never escape. You'll never break free. We'll all be one again. What do you want from me? Jamie shouted, his voice breaking as he struggled to keep his focus. There was a pause, a moment of silence, before the voice answered with chilling calmness, You are the key. You are the only one who can set us free, or trap yourself here with us forever. Jamie's mind raced. What did that mean? Trap yourself here with us forever? Was this some sort of twisted game? He glanced at Alex, who looked even more terrified now. Jamie, Alex said, his voice barely audible, if we don't destroy the book now, if we don't stop the curse, we're both done for. Jamie turned back to the chest. Alex had opened it completely, revealing a strange, ornate box inside, its surface covered in intricate, swirling patterns. The box hummed with dark energy, as though it contained something alive. Something waiting. The voice spoke again, this time closer, so close, it felt like it was breathing down his neck. The box, the key. Open it. Release me. No, Alex whispered urgently, his face pale. Don't open it, Jamie. It's the last piece. The town, it wants you to release it. You can't let it out. But Jamie couldn't tear his gaze away from the box. It was as if it had some kind of pull on him, something stronger than anything he'd ever felt before. The whispers were getting louder, the voices more insistent. I don't have a choice, Jamie muttered under his breath, almost to himself. I have to do something. I have to end this. Alex's eyes widened in disbelief. You don't. The moment you release whatever is in that box. I know, Jamie cut him off, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. But if I don't, it'll never stop. Jamie stepped closer to the box, his hands trembling. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to stop, to run, to ignore the voices, but something deeper inside him urged him forward. He reached out and touched the surface of the box. The moment his fingers brushed against the smooth wood, the room seemed to shift. The shadows danced around him like living things, the walls pulsating with an energy he couldn't explain. Open it, the voice hissed, its tone eager, almost desperate now. Release me, and you will know the truth. All of it. The town, the curse, your destiny. Jamie didn't know what was worse, the voice or the feeling of being compelled to open the box. His hand hovered over the latch, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, without thinking, Jamie yanked the latch open. A wave of energy exploded from the box, forcing Jamie back. The room cracked and groaned as if the very foundations of the town were shaking. The shadows that had been stretching toward him recoiled, swirling violently, trying to escape the energy that was being released. The voice inside Jamie's head reached a crescendo, becoming deafening. You should have listened, Jamie. Now it's too late. In that moment, Jamie realized the truth. The curse wasn't about the town at all. It was about him. The town had been waiting for someone to come, someone to open the box and release the true power buried deep within the earth. The curse had been alive all this time, feeding on the souls of the dead, waiting for its next vessel. And now, Jamie was the vessel. The energy swirling from the box intensified, flooding the chamber with an otherworldly glow. Jamie felt it surge through his body, coursing like liquid fire through his veins. His skin prickled as if he were being touched by thousands of unseen hands, each one sending a sharp, jagged pulse of power through his bones. The voice in his head laughed, low and sinister. Yes. You understand now, don't you, Jamie? You are the key. The town, it is nothing without you. You are the heart, the pulse that keeps it alive. Jamie's stomach churned, his mind reeling from the truth that was crashing over him. His fingers trembled as they clutched the edge of the box, but the pull was too strong, he couldn't let go. The shadows in the room gathered, swirling together, closing in on him like a blanket of darkness. He could feel their eyes on him, watching, waiting. The town had been dead for so long, but Jamie had brought it back to life. He had awakened something ancient, something more powerful than he had ever imagined. And now, the town was demanding its payment. Alex's voice broke through the haze of power swirling in Jamie's mind. Jamie! You have to close it. Don't let it control you. This is what it wants, to make you its vessel. It feeds on the living. Jamie's heart hammered in his chest. He could see Alex now, standing across the room, his face pale with fear. His eyes were wide, but there was something else in them, hope. He turned back to the box. The swirling energy felt like it was trying to consume him, pulling him deeper into its abyss. He wanted to close it, to stop it, but his body refused to obey. His hand stayed pressed against the box, frozen in place. Close it, Jamie! Alex screamed, running toward him. The shadows were thick now, swirling violently around the room. They seemed to be alive, and Jamie could feel them pulling at his body, at his soul. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. All he could hear was the voice. "You're mine now, Jamie. You can't escape. The curse has claimed you. There's nothing left to do but embrace it." But in the depths of his mind, something sparked. A memory. A feeling. Something stronger than the voice. Something that had been buried inside him from the very beginning. With a forcible he didn't know he had, Jamie slammed his free hand against the edge of the box, forcing himself to look away from its blinding glow. He focused on Alex's voice. The one thing that could pull him back from the brink. "You're not alone," Alex shouted, his voice desperate but full of resolve. "We can still stop this." Something in Jamie shifted. The overwhelming pressure, the darkness surrounding him, all of it, it was too much. But the presence of Alex, the one person who had been trying to save him from the very beginning, grounded him. Jamie's body still trembled, but his grip on the box loosened. Slowly, carefully, he pulled his hand away, the energy around him dissipating in sharp pulses. "No!" the voice screamed in his head. "You're mine. I will never let you go." But Jamie fought back. The light in the room flickered, the darkness retreating. The voice's hold on him was weakening. He was getting his control back. "You can't control me," Jamie shouted, stepping back from the box. "I won't let you take me." In that instant, the entire room seemed to vibrate with fury. The walls cracked, the shadows screeched in frustration, but Jamie stood tall. The town, the curse, was no longer in control. He had broken free. But it wasn't over yet. "I'm going to end this," Jamie said, his voice steady now. "I'll find the way." The shadows around the room seemed to lurch back, as if recoiling from his newfound strength. But Jamie knew the fight wasn't over. There was still one final step to take. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from above. The sound of something heavy falling echoed through the chamber. Jamie's heart skipped a beat as he looked toward the ceiling, his breath catching in his throat. The door to the tunnel creaked open, and the heavy footsteps of the undead began to fill the space above them. They were coming. The town, everything, was about to collapse in on itself. "We have to go," Alex urged, his voice frantic. "The tunnel is the only way out. It's not safe here anymore." Jamie nodded, his mind still reeling. The truth was out now. The town's curse, the ancient power buried beneath its streets, it had all been waiting for him. But he had made his choice. He wasn't going to be the town's puppet anymore. The darkness might have wanted him, but Jamie was done running. "We will stop it," Jamie said, as much to himself as to Alex. "We just have to keep moving." With one final glance at the pulsing box, Jamie turned and ran toward the tunnel entrance, pulling Alex along with him. The footsteps grew louder, the town's final gasp of life echoing behind them. The fight was far from over, but Jamie was ready. The truth was within his reach. And he wasn't going to let it slip away. The tunnel was narrow, its walls damp with years of forgotten history. Jamie's breath echoed loudly in the confined space, each exhale carrying a sense of urgency that matched the pounding of his heart. He could feel Alex's hand gripping his arm tightly, pulling him along as the sounds of the undead echoed in the distance, growing closer with every second. Jamie didn't look back. He couldn't. He knew that if he did, he might lose the last sliver of resolve he had left. He had seen enough of what this cursed town could do. Enough to know that there was no turning back once the door to the past had been opened. They reached a bend in the tunnel, and Jamie paused, his pulse racing. "We need to get to the center of the town," he said breathlessly, glancing over at Alex. "That's where the heart of the curse is. The only way to end this, is to destroy what's left of it." Alex nodded, his face grim. "But we don't know what we'll find there. The curse has already taken everything it needs. What's left to destroy?" Jamie didn't have an answer. All he knew was that the town had already consumed too much. Too many lives. Too many souls. And if he didn't act now, the cycle would continue, feeding on anyone foolish enough to step into its grasp. The footsteps behind them grew louder, closer. Their every move felt like a race against time. "I don't think we can outrun them forever," Alex said quietly, his voice tinged with despair. "Even if we destroy the curse, there's no telling what will happen to us. We might not make it out." Jamie turned to face him, his eyes wide with determination. "We have to. We will make it. We've come this far, we can't let it all be for nothing." Alex's eyes softened, a brief flicker of hope crossing his face. "You're right. But let's make it count. Let's finish this together." They pressed on, the sound of their footsteps muffled in the narrow tunnel. Every step took them closer to the heart of the town, to the very source of the curse that had haunted them for so long. As they emerged from the tunnel, Jamie found himself standing at the edge of the town's main square. The center of everything. It was silent here, eerily so. No wind, no rustling leaves, no sound of life. Only the remnants of a town that had been consumed by its own darkness. The square was bathed in an unnatural glow, the same eerie light that had filled the chamber with the box. The pulse of the curse was stronger here, more tangible, as if the very ground beneath their feet hummed with power. "This is it," Jamie whispered, his voice thick with realization. "The source of it all. The heart of the curse." Alex looked around, his expression wary. "How do we destroy it? Do we just burn the town down?" Jamie shook his head, his mind racing. He had to find the answer. He had to stop this. But what could he do against something so ancient, so powerful? He thought back to the book, the box, the voice. The curse had been alive for centuries, feeding off the town's isolation, its secrets. It had only one goal, to live. But there was a way. Jamie was certain of it. He had felt the answer before, deep inside him. The key wasn't in destruction, it was in release. With a deep breath, Jamie stepped forward, his mind focused. He reached out, touching the ground, where the town's pulse seemed to originate. The energy from the curse surged through him once more, but this time, he didn't resist it. He allowed it to flow, to merge with him. He could feel the dark power of the town, like a living thing inside his body, coiling, twisting. "Jamie, what are you doing?" Alex cried, his voice full of fear. "You can't control it." "I'm not controlling it," Jamie said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm releasing it. I'm giving it what it wants, but I won't let it have me." He closed his eyes and concentrated, focusing all his energy on one single thought: let it go. The pulse in the ground intensified, and the air around them began to crackle with power. The town seemed to shudder, as if it was waking up from a long, cursed sleep. But Jamie could feel it now, he wasn't alone in this. The curse was alive. But so was he. With a final, desperate push, Jamie reached deep within himself, pulling on everything he had left. And then, just as he had hoped, it began. The pulse of the curse slowed, faltered, and then stopped. The town shuddered one last time. The light faded. Silence. For a long moment, Jamie stood there, breathless, his hands still pressed against the ground. The curse was gone. The town was free. But so was he. The darkness that had haunted him, the weight that had pressed down on his soul, vanished. "Jamie?" Alex's voice broke through the stillness. He stepped forward, his eyes wide with awe. Did you do it?" Jamie nodded, his face weary but filled with relief. "It's over." But as they stood there in the middle of the square, the ruins of the cursed town now still and silent, a new realization hit Jamie. This wasn't the end, not for him. Not for Alex. Not for anyone who had been caught in the town's web. "Let's go," Jamie said softly. "We still have a long way to go." And as they turned and walked away, the town faded behind them, swallowed by the darkness. The footsteps, the whispers, and the secrets, it was all gone. For now. The end.